and kind of a strong negotiation phase, or let's say a strong power to the distributor at the same time.
100%, absolutely. But equally, distributors will be very brand aware, and they
of
wouldn't
course.
want to be sort of nominated in the press that they've let someone like Asda down, a major retailer. It's not now working with Vanderlande because of the relationship breakdown or whatever. So, everyone's very, very paranoid about brand protection. So it's a growing conversation, really, isn't it?
Okay. I think it's clear. At least on my side, I have my questions answered. I'll leave Henry or Nicholas, if they have any further questions at this stage.
No, I don't think so. That's been great.
And it was extremely helpful. Just two final closing remarks or comments, if you can provide. One is there a massive change when you're discussing a new project, a new design of a new warehouse versus an existing warehouse? That's one. Any of those comments that you made would change a little bit. And second, if you were to say in terms of pricing pressure, based on your experience when you're contracted, did you see any pricing pressure being exerted back to the distributors?
Okay. So new versus existing, yeah, it's a really interesting one. I've got experience of both, where we've either done greenfield sites, which are building the shell of the building from a field up into the full commission £50 million systems, versus retrofitting equipment into an existing operation. Sometimes these operations are also already working 24/7, and you're taking a corner of the warehouse, or I've even built mezzanines above live operations and then put an AutoStore grid system, for example, on that mezzanine to integrate it into the system. So coordination and health and safety risk management are absolutely critical at that point. So, in the greenfield example, you may have builders on site still doing the completion of the shell of the building, interfering with the work and installation and commissioning programs of the automation vendor inside. In the retrofit solution, you've got operators who may find the arrival of new technology in their building to be culturally very challenging. There's lots of different tribal behaviours happening there. In terms of making sure that your risk assessments and your safe ways of working are understood on a daily basis to avoid accidents, and just good sort of communication between different parties on site is absolutely critical. Again, in my experience, it pays dividends for internal retail engineering resource to overmanage and oversee the third-party contractors on site, so you don't have a third-party vendor fighting with an operator, for example. You absolutely need to be in the middle of that to referee and make sure that people are planning safe ways of working and adhering to their programs. So new versus existing is always fascinating. More and more businesses now are running 24/7 operations. So previously you had the advantage of either working nights or weekends around operations because they only work 2 shifts, 5 days a week. More and more businesses are stretching their efforts. You're now having to work limited time, standing people down at short notice. Production overrun means you're then implicating the ability of the builders to do the work when they're scheduled, and that has lots of stand-down costs as well. So the integration and coordination on site between different parties is absolutely critical to your first point. The second point on pricing pressures, we all know that with the incoming impact of Brexit, a lot of traditional warehouse labour is going back home. So the cost of employment is going to go up significantly. The cost of land and availability of warehouse space near to significant populations and cities in the UK is forever going up. I've seen increases in land prices of 15 to 20% in the last year. So again, the ability to minimise your footprint and use the cube of going up instead of out is absolutely critical. So your multi-shuttle type systems and grid systems are much more space efficient than manual systems. It saves you footprint and therefore the amount of land you need for a greenfield site. Equally, the cost of steel has also gone up something like 12% in the last year. So with a lot of conveyors and cranes made out of